Welcome to Valencia. Revo starts on pole from Awful Catfish and Daniel Bogdasarov. Then it's Inet Babinis Jr., Oscar Folstad in 5th, and Daf Sanchez starting 6th. Zach Wallace starts 7th from Sebastian Ocampo and Marcus Nelson. Then it's Remy Lebeau in 10th, Ray Shen in 11th, and Tonelli Gabo starting 12th. Pierre Gasly is alongside from Lawless Leclerc and Pablo Sierra. Then it's Ica World, the Red Devil, U-Cable, Xavier Kubica, Scotland Rotak, Cosmas Medicis, and Verstia. The first lap of this race will be run behind the pace car in honor of Eddie Jordan. There will be no commentary. Well then, the pace car will come into the pits at the end of the opening lap. Revo will lead us back to green in the ERL Formula E Series, and our first race back in Valencia gets underway. Now, as he comes across the line to start lap 2 of 17, everyone of course squabbling over the fastest lap coming across the line, but I think Revo's jump off the start might have been one of the best that we've seen in recent memory. Hopefully that will be one of the last times that we see the pace car in general. U-Cable getting a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision. That is with Pablo Sierra going side by side. He's dropped down to 18th alongside the Red Devil. Catfish getting the fastest first sector further up ahead. That is the trackhouse of Ica World getting himself up into 15th position as his teammates hit the new fastest first sector of anybody. Out in front, however, it is still Linus Stern. And that usually happens when you start a race single file. Don't really have double file restarts in this series. It's a lot safer that way. IndyCar, in real life, tried it out themselves in 2011. Didn't go too well, especially not at St. Petersburg. But as we now start lap 3 of 17, it is Revo who leads the way from Catfish and Daniel Bogdasarov. Babinis Jr. still in 4th. An attack right should be active on this lap. I do believe this is official news now. The point for the fastest lap is now gone. The Red Devil's been given a 5-second time penalty. He will serve that during his first pit stop. That's seemingly contact with U-Cable as well. Bogdasarov setting a fastest first step of anybody in that yellow and blue machine of the Renault. We go on board with the Edam's Renault driver as he now enters the final sector. Like the new track in Abuja, this track isn't very long. In fact, this is very similar to Jerez, where we tested the cars, but different enough as to where we can race on it. And here comes Baltasarov using attack mode, closing in on Catfish as Catfish closes in on Revo, a 101.2 fastest lap for the French-Russian driver, enters under a French racing license for pretty obvious reasons. Similar to Mikhail Gurovic in the IndyCar series, who has entered under the banner of the European Union, because, of course, politics, which is not fun. A little bit of elevation change dropping down here through this part of the lap. Catfish is gaining on Revo, ever so slightly, with 13 laps to go in this race, which will have 16 racing laps completed at most, and one tribute lap to the greatest in F1, one of the greatest in F1 in general. A man who not only ran his own team, who is a musician, pundit, even he was the one to announce that Schumacher was returning and leaving, and announced that Lewis Hamilton was going to come in to Mercedes back in 2012, 2013, as we're now on lap 5 of 17. Eddie Jordan, you will be missed. And to see all these drivers racing as hard as they are, certainly what he wants is UK Ball getting a 5-second time penalty again for causing a clip, and that's 10 seconds in the pits. We've got a gold number now. We have updated the graphics set ever so slightly as to where now all the drivers have the same design motif. And further up front, we've missed this move. Catfish has taken the lead in Valencia. Baltasarov up into second, and he might try and go for the race lead as well. Catfish and Revo are fighting for the championship, and Baltasarov swoops by into the race lead ahead of Catfish and Revo. Between these two, the men second and third, whoever finishes ahead today walks into race 6, leading the championship. They are tied on points. Here comes the Italian down the inside on the Malaysian, who's going alongside. There he goes up into second position versus Theo coming into the pits. First man to stop with 11 laps to go. He's basically consigned himself to a 2-stop strategy, which is a strategy that we're seeing all that more often in the ERL in general, not just Formula E, but also in IndyCar. Of course, we've only had one IndyCar race in St. Petersburg, and that was absolute chaos to the point where a timing error gifted the win to Niven Colby. And Gurovic and his team decided not to contest that, so it's an interesting thing to happen. Revo looking for the race lead. He sends it down the inside. He's taking it from Baltasarov. Revo to the race lead in Valencia, but look at the state of Baltasarov's softs. In come the top 2 and maybe even the top 3. Catfish stays out. It is Catfish who leads. Mediums go on to Revo's car. In fact, a plethora of drivers coming into the pits. And do you want to know what would be the biggest loss? UK Ball coming into the pits to serve that 10-second time penalty. He's gonna drop down to the back of the pack, that's for sure. And that is not the way that the multi-champion would like to have his race start, as he will be held in the pits for 10 seconds there before medium tyres will inevitably go on. Babinets Jr. has gone his way past Catfish, and he leads from the aforementioned Catfish and Zach Wallace. Then it's Nelson, Ocampo, Gasly, Remy LeBeau, Leclerc, Kubica, Sierra, the Red Devil, Cosmas Medicis, and Baltasarov is the leading man of the drivers who have come into the pits. He's currently in 13th. Behind him is Oscar Falstad. Then it's Revo, Sanchez, Gabo, Ray Shen, Vestido, Ica World, Scotland Rotak, and a long way back UK Ball. And it's Babinets Jr. staying out. In comes Catfish. Where is Revo in all of this? I think he might be heading into the final turn. He will be heading into the final turn. Has Catfish and the overcut paid off? We're going to find out right now. He's been stopped. That's Wallace coming out ahead. Has that changed the event of this race? It has. Catfish has come out in 12th. He's behind Wallace. He's behind Sanchez. He's behind Revo. My goodness, there goes the number 7 back up into 9th. He's going to have to chase after Falstad, surely, if he's going to have any hope of winning today in Spain. The first ERL race in Spain in a long, long time. It has been so long since we've raced in Spain. In fact, I don't actually know if we actually have raced in Spain, whether that be Valencia or Barcelona. We probably have. As there goes Revo to 8th position. He's having to defend from both Cosmas Medicis and Dav Sanchez. Babinis Jr. has done 8 laps on those softs and he comes into the pits now. Remy LeBeau will take the race lead ahead of Lala Leclerc. Here comes the Monaco's British driver with only 8 more laps to go. He takes the lead here in Spain. And it's a Renault 2-3 currently behind these two. Remy is trying his best to skip this first stage of stops. As Sierra going past, Gabo getting a time penalty in 11th. For Sims Motorsport, today is not the day they needed. They started with one of their drivers on the front row and with hope of finally taking the championship lead outright. But that hope is effectively disintegrated. We're on board with Remy LeBeau, currently in 2nd position on the hard tyres, so he's going to be a lot less racy. VRL Formula E Series powered by Beyblade X on this March 21st day, Beyblade Day in fact. And honestly, it's quite a great race to celebrate Beyblade Day. In comes Leclerc. Does Remy follow in? He does. Daniel Bogdasarov leads in Spain. His teammate comes into the pits as well. With 7 laps to go. Sierra at his home race did show some pretty good pace there. Here comes Sanchez down the inside. Long side. In Revo, here he comes, still with him. That is 7th. And now Falstad and Catfish all over the back of the most successful ERL driver currently on the grid. But next season, that will not be the case. Whether that be because someone like Ocampo or UCable were to take their 3rd championship this season, that is irrelevant, because the 10-timer is coming back to the ERL Formula E Series. B-Dragon Sonic has officially announced that he will return for seasons 23 and 24 before making his official retirement. Because if you're in the loop about everything, you'll know that V-Dragon Sonic, he was intending to run until season 15. He just didn't because he gave up the seat to Babinis. Babinis Senior, that is, as we are on board with Falstad. He tried to go around the outside on Revo, just didn't work out. Look at the field. This is the fight for 2nd. They're 3 seconds off the back of Bogdasarov. There goes Revo going down the inside to take 2nd away from Dav Sanchez. But this is some absolutely magnificent racing. This is the stuff of the legend. This is the pinnacle of the ERL, if you ask me. That is why this is the top series. IndyCar, while not by any means a worse series, you just don't get this from a combustion engine. This is what happens when you're electrically powered. As Catfish finally up to the back of Revo again. My main question is, how on earth has Bogdasarov managed to pull 3 seconds on the rest of the field? That is a strategic masterclass from the Renault man. Here comes Catfish, not quite close enough to make the move. I'm pretty sure he's going to have a shot going through 1 and 2, however. He's going to have to defend from Sanchez, who lunges down the inside. Both of these men are going to get attack mode, and there are grey clouds forming above this track. There goes Catfish from 4th to 2nd in a single turn. Heavy braking being the name of the day. Sanchez being lucky not to collide with the Italian. As we're on board with the number 72 for DS Andretti, doing what he can to help his team with his teammate down in 8th. You can see, as I've already mentioned, darkening clouds. Catfish currently up in 2nd. Will rain fall? As there goes Sanchez, possibly even Babinis Jr. ahead of Revo. Babinis Jr. not quite able to make the move, but on board with Revo, trying to go alongside with Dav Sanchez. Bogdasarov 2.7 seconds ahead. It's raining! It's pouring down in Valencia! They're going to have to keep their cars on the track as much as they humanly can. But the rain is falling. In Spain, Bogdasarov comes into the pits. That's the entire field into the pits. Tsuchida have the first pit box by proxy of being the first team entered into the series. That was a relatively quick stop. Bogdasarov coming out of the pits now. He will be expected and does resume his race lead. Sanchez will be second, we believe. Where is Revo going to be? Will he be behind Catfish? He is behind Catfish. And Zach Wallace up in third. The Italian. Well, that's a strategic masterclass from one end of the McLaren pit crew. For the other, Falstad coming out of the pits in ninth. Honestly, could be much worse. For the man who started this race on pole, though, rain. Not exactly what he would have wanted to see. So much has happened today in Valencia. This might go down in history as one of the best races to happen, and if there's any complaints, it has to be lap 1 in terms of if you're a racing purist, but you do have to salute a legend of motorsport. As Vestio goes ahead of Revo, is there a problem with that Tsuchida car? It's just the number 7. The 3-time World Drivers' Champion going for his 4th. He doesn't look anywhere near as confident, as comfortable as he has done in the drive. Wallace is on course for his first podium of his career, and he's going to do it ahead of Catfish, who's on course to take his team Sims Porsche to the top of the driver's standings for the first time in their history. The only man to win a race in a Sims car is looking to do a lot more than that. Catfish has been in the centre of title battles before, if you can cast your minds back to seasons 3, 4 and 5. He was there as part of the Mercedes versus Jaguar conflict. Well, it was more Jaguar versus B-Dragon Sonic, because Revo in season 3 probably reached peak disillusionment with his team and starts up his own team in season 4 in Revolution Racing. And then Milestone, he was actually a Jaguar Junior, so there wasn't too much that Mercedes could do in terms of everything. Looking back with Catfish, as Vestio is actually having a monster fight back through the field. He started this race and lost. Is he going for a podium? He might be, because that's 4th position for the number 38. This is brilliant stuff from the Brazilian. On board with the Mercedes EQ driver. Following with Zach Wallace. These two drivers, both young and hungry for every single point that they can get. And they are now both fighting for their first career podiums. Here he comes, going down the inside. That's one of the cleanest moves I've seen in a long time. And of course it has to come from a Brazilian driving car number 38. Wallace now under pressure from Catfish, who wants to get back up into 4th, possibly 3rd if he can manage it. Still with him, almost contact with the Italian that he's alongside with, keeps it clean, however, still alongside him. This is going to go right down to the final turn. No attack mode because of the wet conditions, and we are on to the penultimate lap. Lap 16 of 17 in the Valencia E-Prix on BDS Formula 1 Motorsports. It is Daniel Bogdasarov who has led every lap since the first phase of pit stops. Then Dav Sanchez in second, Vestio, the rookie, in 3rd position from Zach Wallace and Catfish. Then it's Babinus Jr., Revo, the man who entered this race level on points with Catfish and is looking to be 2nd in the championship after this round 5 of the ERL Formula E Series. And he's going to try and get himself up into 6th to minimize the damage, and he's done that quite well. Catfish, however, heard about that and decides to do the same thing. That's 4th position for the Malaysian driver, as Revo on board with him, still fighting with Babinus Jr., the son of Revo's first teammate while he was at Hyperdrive Racing, while he was winning championships, of course. He joined Hyperdrive in season 13, and he did quite well while he was there. It's the final lap in Valencia. Bogdasarov, he's led such a race so far. In a race commemorating the life of one of motorsport's greats. It's a great drive from an even greater driver. A man who certainly deserves to go in the Hall of Fame. It's Verstio behind, closing in on Dav Sanchez. That might go down to the wire. For this man, nothing is going to go down to the wire as Gasly sets the fastest first sector. He has been leading since at least lap 10. And on lap 17 of 17, Renault Edams, Team Edams Renault officially, will come home and see their driver win once again. Daniel Bogdasarov takes the Valencia E-Prix ahead of Dav Sanchez and Verstio. Catfish will come across the line to finish in 4th and take the World Drivers' Championship lead. Zach Wallace in 5th, Revo in 6th. The man who started on pole drops so many positions. Then it's Babnas Jr., Ocampo, Falstaff, and Pierre Gasly. Verstio came across the line with the fastest lap. How about that? And in fact, 100th of a second between the top two, as we're watching the fight for 20th position between UK Ball and Cosmas Modisis. This is going to go right down to the line. Side by side photo finish. And it's going to be Cosmas. Just about. It's happened again. Another scoring error has put Verstio at the top of the drivers' list today. That's his first career victory. And it's a scoring error. These things happen, and in the ERL, you just kind of have to deal with it. Bogdasarov in second from Dav Sanchez, then Zach Wallace, Pierre Gasly, Xavier Kubica, Iker World, Sebastian Ocampo, and Babnas Jr. Then it's Catfish in 10th from Tonali Gabo and Revo. There's been a major scoring issue today. And I had to take a break for a second there from actually commentating just to make sure that everything's happening. Of course, this race, in honor of the late great Eddie Jordan, as you can see the rest of the finishing order here, and of course what it means for the championship. And we will of course report these scoring errors to Marco Persque, because we don't want the championship to be decided on something like this, as we now take a look at the constructors' standings heading into the next round of the season. Techeetah leading from Andretti and Sims Porsche. Then it's Kiro, Venturi, Mercedes, Trackhouse, Renault, McLaren, Power, and Nissan. And we will see you guys next time then when the ERL returns.